So, hi, so nice to meet you in person.
Hello, so nice to sort of meet you in person as well after all our little texts and
I
DM.
know, and I was so touched when you just reached out. I was so flattered because you're such a beautiful presence. So it's so cool to have you here.
Oh, and do you know what's been so lovely is I've been just sitting here quietly, just reading all the comments and seeing what everybody's celebrating and feeling grateful for and everything else. So it's been lovely to me to meet your community, and I'm just really, really looking forward to what's going to happen over the next hour or so.
Oh, what time is it where you are?
It is 6:15 in the evening. So this is London calling. We're coming to you live from just outside of London.
Amazing. Well, let's dive right in. I felt like you were such a perfect guest to have with us today, but really any day would be a great day to have you around. You've written books and had so much of your own sparkle in many parts of your career, but you have a sign for one of the things that you've been putting in the world. This Girl is on Fire, which is a book that came out in 2020. And before we dive into your story and the books, I just want to say it's amazing, isn't it, how depending on where we are sort of holding emotionally in a moment, we can just forget everything that we wanted to show up for today. And we have so much being thrown at us all the time. There's always something. And I think that we have to learn how to cultivate this internal thermostat so that we can make every single day as we want it to be, because it's such a precious gift. And so I love that you've been helping women, especially, to claim it for themselves and be in charge of the way that it's going to go. So thank you for doing all of that. And that's why I thought there's no better time for this conversation than every day. So let's talk about how you got into this work. What was the sort of arc in your own story that made it evident to you that this kind of mission really mattered and became sort of what you wanted to dedicate your life to?
I think for me, I'm 53 now, and for me, it was something that was sort of growing and growing. I would say over the last 6 years or so, it was a space that I was diving into more on my own. It's something I'd been interested in my whole life, really, but I was starting to try and help as many people as I could, just in my own little way, I suppose. To give it sort of context, so here in the UK, I, until 2 years ago, and I quit my job in the middle of the pandemic, I was a television broadcaster. I was a national TV broadcaster. I was the host of the British equivalent of The View. I did that for 13 years. And then I worked on, again, the British equivalent of Good Morning America for 11 years before that. So I was a very recognized face as a certain thing. But I was just feeling more and more pulled towards service, I suppose. And while I was trying to sort of do it on air and do it in the medium that had been working in for 20 odd years, it didn't feel complete. So for me, the catalyst was actually something that was pretty horrible, but it was, as we all know, getting to rock bottom is actually the perfect place, because that's where you push off from. I had a breakdown. I literally got to the end of my tether, as I say here in the UK. I had tried to be the perfect presenter, perfect mum, perfect wife, turn up for everybody, do as much as I could on the side to help as many women as I could. I hadn't addressed a lot of stuff that I was lugging around like a bag of rocks. And then one day it all got too much. And about a couple of hours before I was due to go on air, I literally collapsed and I had a moment of, I can't do this anymore. Being a professional, pulled myself together, managed to host the show, and then went home and said to my husband, I can't do this anymore. And that was when I started putting in place plans for, right, if this is my rock bottom, if I could wave a magic wand and do anything with my life, what would it look like? And I realized I wanted to go all in on This Girl's on Fire. I'd already formed it. It was an online blog where I was, like I say, I was helping people as much as I could. And that was what I did. And I've just spent the past, however many years it's been now, putting into place as much as I could to not only help women here in the UK, but to do it globally. Because the human condition is a global experience. Just because I happen to live here, it doesn't mean it's, you know, what I feel or experience is any different to anybody else. So in a nutshell, that is what sort of got me to where I am right now.
Oh my God, it is so brave and so epic that you shared that story. So the morning show is clearly all about you, and you're who Alex Levy wishes she was.
I did watch, do you know, can I just tell you, I was in that. I was literally watching it, sitting with my husband, and it was the start of the second series. And we're sitting at home, you know, with a little glass, watching it. And we both went, that's me, that's you. And, you know, in the background, they show TV shows that are playing. If you watch series 1, there's a bit when they go into the boss's office. I'm on the screen in the background. How amazing is that?
It's so meta, right? Because it's like exactly parallel to what you were experiencing. You're like, this is hitting a little too close to home.
Yeah.
It's really generous that you share so transparently the story, because boy, do we all think that everyone else is just living their best life and we're the only one who are, you know, reeling in these moments. And that's definitely not the case. Let's see if we could unpack that for a second. Like, what led to that? What do you think the lesson was in why the train got off the track?
So I don't know if it's screening over in America at the moment, but have you heard of a program called SAS Who Des Wins? Has it launched over there yet?
No, but I'm also not the person to ask because I live under such a rock of busyness. I miss a lot of things, but go ahead.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure it is coming your way, but it started here in the UK. There's a TV program called SAS Who Dares Wins. And the premise of it is where they take normal people, and it's 4 ex-Marines, and they whisk you away and put a bag over your head and pretty much kidnap you and take you to a deserted place. And they put you through your paces. They take all your belongings off of you, and you are pretty much shouted at from morning till night. And it's very physical and very mental. I went on that show as it was the first time they'd ever done a celebrity version. At the time, I was the oldest person to ever take part, and I was among the first ever group of women to ever take part. So you might think, why would I say yes to doing this horrific show? I said yes because it felt like the universe wanted me to, because I turned it down 3 times and it kept coming back. And the 3rd or 4th time that it came back, I thought, there's a reason why they're being so persistent with this. Because in the TV world, if you turn something down, they may politely ask you one more time, and then that's, you know, they'll have a list of other people. But it kept coming back. And I thought there's a reason why I need to do this. There's a reason why I'm being called to do this. And the reason became really clear, because doing that show changed my whole life. Why is that? The moment that and it sounds horrific when you say it out loud now, but you get bags put over your head and you're driven off somewhere, and it is scary, even though you know it's a TV show. The moment the bag was whipped off of my head, and there's a Marine standing right in front of me, shouting at me and glaring into my eyes. I'd had some fairly traumatic things happen to me in my past that I hadn't addressed. And in that moment, it was like that. I was back there. And it was like a box opened and all the bats flew out and I couldn't push them back in again. And doing that show, there was a lot of like I say, it was very brutal physically and mentally. The SAS guys figured out quite quickly what was happening with me, called me in, interrogated me, got me to admit what was actually happening. They didn't show it on the television. The production team were very kind. And what they explained to me, the SAS men, was every time we shout at you, allow yourself to feel the rage that you didn't allow yourself to feel before because you were afraid. We want to see how angry you are and how hurt you are and how much pain you're in. Release it onto us. So I took part in the show. I ended up getting discharged medically because I got hypothermia. I came home and I'd had this insane experience that you come back to your normal life and you're being a mum and you're going back to work and you're trying to explain to your husband, well, it really was quite awful. And then they did shout at me a lot. And yeah, some stuff came up, but I think I'm okay. And I realized actually I wasn't okay. And I tried to go back to normal life, but I couldn't get the bats back in the box. And for me, that was what started the sort of disintegration of all the masks that we wear, all the things that we put in place to keep ourselves so busy that we don't actually address any of the things that are causing us so much distress. What they do is eventually they build and build and build like layers of mud and silt. And eventually I just got so heavy and so full, I fell down. And I've been very open about it afterwards because I realized that no one would expect it of me. You know, I'm a very open, friendly, warm person that no one would ever have expected that I had experienced trauma in my past because I never spoke about it. And whilst I still have never gone into the details of it, to be open about the fact that actually I'd experienced something, not dealt with it and held it in, had led to me falling down, meant that it helped other people hold their hands up and admit that they'd experienced things either in their past, their distant past, their near past, or were experiencing in their present. And it was quite rare for someone in the public eye, especially a national daytime daily presenter who everyone tunes in every day, expecting, you know, to see my smiley face interviewing people and this sort of thing. And I decided to write a book about it. And the book was called This Girl's on Fire. And that was what kickstarted the whole process of, do you know what, I'm going to walk away from this life, which was all I'd known really for 2 decades, and go fully into helping people at whatever it is. You know, my experience is my experience. We all have our own, you know, universal experience, but really all I do now, I have the best job in the world. My job is to just help people feel really great about themselves. I trained as a coach. I spend my life interviewing experts, helping pay it forward that they have, and I'm just the vehicle. That's all I see myself as. I'm just the vehicle. It passes through me, and I'm lucky that I have a big mouthpiece, but a big mouth as well, and I just pass it on to everybody.
Wow. If you're listening to this and you're feeling like you relate, type a 1 in the chat. If there's a part of you that feels like there's any mask at any part of your identity that you'd like to remove, yeah, type a 1. It's so important that we have these conversations. It couldn't be more important. You know, all we're really seeking all the time, you know, you ask people, why do you want success? Why do you want achievement? Why do you want abundance? And usually the sponsoring feeling is freedom. We want this sense of freedom. If we have money, there's a sense that we'll be feeling free. If we have success, there's a feeling of free, of being really having achieved. What does that mean? It means that who you are, your potential has been set free. And really, this freedom is on the other side of your authenticity. And what's at risk for so many of us in so many moments is belonging, is people being uncomfortable with our truth, is people exiting the relationship. And truly, it's too high a cost. It's too high a cost to wear a mask, because you don't belong to anyone if you don't belong to yourself. And we have to stop thinking that discomfort is equal to, some kind of danger. It's like, we're not willing to have confrontation or hold that we might put our truth down at the Thanksgiving table. There can still be love. In fact, there can be an opportunity for even a greater aspect of love when there's authenticity, and we can allow people to have their responses, and we can be free. And we don't really come in this world meant to belong to everyone. There's all kinds of people in this world, and some people are never going to go and sing show tunes with you. That's just not their thing. And some people are not going to be interested in hiking or be interested in your values. And it doesn't mean you can't respect and love them, but you don't really belong to everyone. And you run the risk of not belonging to the people you belong to when you try to belong to everyone. And I can only imagine for you being so smart and so pretty that you got a lot of praise, and it almost becomes a sense of affirmation. Oh, I'm supposed to be pleasing all the time. Like, clearly this is what I do. I make people feel at ease, and I check all the boxes. And then you just can get sort of stuck in a place where you forget that that's not your job. Your job is not that.
I think for me, obviously I can't speak for everybody, but in terms of, for me, I think it was, I've always been a really good girl. So I was a great daughter. I still am a great daughter. I have a brilliant parents. I'm really lucky, who are still with us, and they live around the corner from me. But I was an eldest daughter, loved trying my hardest, being my best, and this sort of thing. But as I grew into my sort of early 20s and early 30s, I realized that had become quite brittle, because I attached it was almost like, don't step on the cracks, don't get anything wrong, always do your best, always be perky, always be smiling, or take whatever adversity, and there, if you watch the morning shows, a lot of adversity, and take everything with it, with a smile, and just accept it is what it is. And even in my previous relationships, stay quiet, dim your light, make yourself small, constantly acquiesce. And it became a survival technique, really, in some instances. But then also what happened with my career, and I loved my job. It's such a brilliant job, being able to, be on national TV for so long. I did it from when I was in my 20s. And so people have grown up with me. They know me. I get still stopped in the street by people who obviously recognize me from even, way back. But the problem came when I was considering leaving, was one, obviously financially, because I was quitting my job in the middle of a pandemic to start a business that I had no idea whether it would work or not. But also the ego tries to stop you, because who am I if I'm not this thing? I have been this thing for so long. I have a job that's shiny, and everybody is fighting to get in, and yet I'm walking against the stream to get out. But the feeling of I'm not in the right place became too strong. So actually, once I'd weighed the pros and cons of the practicalities of leaving, and sort of wrote them all down, and I wrote what I call my blueprint for failure, which is, okay, what is it you're scared of? Now, if this happens, could you live with that? Yes. Right. Okay. So if this happens, could you live with that? Yes. And when I got all the way down to the worst possible outcome, could I live with that? And do I still want to do this? Yes. Then I felt like my heart was free, and I quit the next day, and I handed my notice in, and thought, instead of thinking, who am I if I'm not that, I thought, I am now becoming what I'm meant to be. And literally the day I left, you know, after a 20 odd year career working for the same national broadcaster, it's so funny because this thing that seems so important, I left with a cake, some cards, all the clothes I could literally cram into a bag without the wardrobe people stopping me. Actually, I'm joking. They were really good, but they helped me cram it into a bag. And that's it. That's all you have to show. And I got home, you know, my husband said, so how do you feel? And I said, I feel free. I feel free. And then that was it. On the Monday, started working and doing something completely different. And that fear that I had of people saying to me, didn't you used to be, has actually never happened, because I am still me. People say, oh, you're Andrea. Oh, I recognize you. And it's so beautiful because now I'm getting women sidling up to me in supermarkets saying, I'm a member of your community. I read your book and now I'm being known for this. And actually, I needn't have worried, because that whole worry of who am I if I am not is irrelevant, because I am. I am what I am.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I love that you just ended it with, I am what I am, that I am. I was just this week with Deepak Chopra for 3 days, meditating with Deepak. And what I was going to say a second before you finished was really at the heart of that, which is the greatest, most satisfying moment is being able to sit beside yourself and find a sense of lightness of being. That you are just this, I am. You're not your name, and you're not your parents, and you're not your history, and you're not your work, and your identity is really just this conscious, beautiful, endless soul. And everything we're seeking is that connection with that which is really, which is that endless, unending, beautiful part of us that is truly us, that was there at the moment of conception. And there is no amount of anything in the exterior that changes your perception of your experience of being present to what you really are. And when you have lightness of being, you're free. And as much as people want achievement and all of the things that we're constantly seeing with our eyes, what we really want is bliss and transcendence and a mystical experience and a feeling of wholeness. That is what everyone actually wants. And none of that comes from anything other than being in integrity. And so for all of us that are on this call, especially if you're building something and you're building a podcast, or you're thinking of creating a platform or speaking about whatever feels true for you, that is a path to more of that lightness of being, because it's all about the process of it. It's not about the outcome. It's not what's on the other side. It's an opportunity. It's a vehicle to practice being in that place. And it's an amazing thing. It's like your life becomes a meditation when you can just live your life out loud. And PS for everybody, there's a lot of us on this call who are starting podcasts and wanting to make more of an impact in the world. You know, part of the reason I like to invite you into these conversations is for you to look at these conversations as they happen. And we've done almost 700 shows now on my show, but you can tell, I mean, Andrea can tell that I'm not scripting this. I have a bunch of research in front of me about you, but I just listen to you. And that's what makes this the most delicious, fun experience for me, is that it's presence. We're just being present. And I think that's why the show, my show is working. And I think that's why your books are landing. And I think that's why you've always resonated with people, because there is such a goodness and a lovingness that comes through you. So let's talk for a second about what you want people to walk away from with the community you've built, with the books. Ultimately, what is the pain point that you're trying to help people to solve, to heal?
For me, if I could pass on one thing, and I really strongly feel that at the beginning it was, who am I to do this thing? But it genuinely felt like a calling. And then when I did meditate on it and sit in stillness with it, and I realized I was putting too much pressure on myself for having to come up with all the answers. And I realized, actually, no, it comes through me. It's not me. It's the people that I interview or introduce my community to. And for me, the one thing that I would love to pass on to my community is to understand the power of walking alongside your fear, because we're so afraid. Sometimes we're afraid of our own power. We're afraid of what we see as our weakness. We're afraid of other people's judgment of us. There are so many things that we it's like a frequency that we tune into our fear, and it becomes so loud that we can't hear anything else. And everything that I try and express to my community or teach them kind of leads back to the same thing. And it's showing that you will never, people talk about crushing fear and overcoming fear, and you will never do these things. You learn to walk alongside fear. And one of the ways that I do this with the community is, like I say, through books and this sort of thing, is it's a visualization that I talk them through, where I get them to close their eyes and I tell them to imagine themselves in a cell. Now it can be like a basement and a dark cell, and there are bars in front of you, and in front of you is a ferocious tiger, a huge beast, and it is this tiger that just marches up and down and up and down, and it's terrifying. And every time you make a move to walk towards the front of the cage, the tiger launches itself at you and you back away with fear. And then one day you notice that this tiger is female, and you'd always assumed that because it looks so big and scary that is male and is keeping you prisoner. And then you realize that actually this tiger it's never once tried to get in. It's never tried to get at you. What it's doing is protecting you. And with that realization, you realize that the door has been open the whole time. So I talked them through this visualization of walking through the door, tiger pouncing on them, pinning them to the floor, roaring into their face so that their whole being is consumed with the roar of this tiger. And that is fear. And what you realize, that actually that fear comes from love, and it's trying to protect you and keep you safe. And the way to overcome it is to love it back, is to hold the tiger's face and will yourself, even though you're so afraid, to feel so much love for this creature that actually it will step off you and you can step up, place your hand on its head and walk alongside it. And between you, you are courage, the tiger is fear, and you can walk alongside it. And every time you feel its hackles rise and you feel that fear, you realize it's trying to protect you. Don't try and squash it down. Don't try and smash it with very masculine sort of energy. Actually place your hand on its head and reassure it, it's okay, I've got this, and thank you so much for trying to protect me. So in a nutshell, that's what I try and show the women in my community. Fear is so powerful and so beautiful, but you will never squash it, and you shouldn't, because it's there to look after you.
That is absolutely stunning. I have never, ever, ever heard it turned around like that. And it is so incredibly helpful, because you're not going to get rid of the Joker. You know, Batman actually wouldn't be Batman without the Joker. And it's our ego, it's all that fear, you know, that was designed originally to help protect us. And so it really is so moving. I've never thought of it that way, but to really love it. You wrote a book more recently called You Just Need to Believe It, 10 Ways in 10 Days to Unlock Your Courage and Reclaim Your Power. And what you just said is very much a step in that direction. What else do we need to understand as we are walking toward the life we really know is for us? And there's fear, because I will just say what's really frustrating is that very often fear doesn't present itself as fear. It presents itself as something else. And really it's just fear, but it will present itself as, oh, I'm just lacking this resource. I need more time. This isn't good. I need to redo this. When really it's just fear. And it presents itself as, but it's just that I don't know this thing. I don't know that thing. And it's really I'm scared in this moment. It's not really a strategy question as much as it's a courage question. And there's a feeling of fear that I don't even recognize because it's in my blind spot. And so as we want to be able to move into our greatness and into the life that just feels like it's filled with ease and synchronicity, we do need to be working with this fear. And I'm curious what you would say, because sometimes it really doesn't present as such, even though that's all it is.
Well, sometimes, and well, not even sometimes, very often, fear can present itself as anger. You know, for example, if you're having a conversation with someone, or you're feeling in conflict with someone, and something in you rises and you're so angry, a lot of the time that is fear, because you're feeling threatened, or there's something about their behavior or their tone of voice that is reminding you of something from your past that is making you feel fearful. So I think, and again, I know your community will already be so good at this, is to be curious. That's a strange reaction. Why am I so angry about this thing, which actually doesn't feel that important? If we're able to tune into ourselves and understand, oh gosh, it's because they actually remind me of this, and I'm frightened, and I'm feeling defensive, or I'm frightened that I'm going to be caught out. I'm frightened that you're going to call me out. I'm frightened that you're going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, and then I'm going to look ridiculous. There's so many things. And going back to the book that you mentioned called You Just Need to Believe It, the reason I called it that is tied up in this. And it's because this idea that, you know, you just need to believe in something and all your wishes will come true, and life will be easy and it will all be great, is clearly not how life is. However, you have this superpower, which is believing in something, because you already believe something about yourself. But 9 times out of 10, it's probably something that's not great. You already believe that you're not good enough, or you're too big or too small or too stupid or too slow, or all this huge list of things that you already believe in yourself, and you're convinced by it. You're 100%. If you took a lie detector test, you would pass, because you so strongly believe this about yourself. So you already have this skill. All you need to do is learn to flip it on its head. If you can believe one thing about yourself, you can believe another thing about yourself. And you know why I call it 10 ways in 10 days. It's clearly you're not going to be fixed in 10 days. Not that anyone needs to be fixed, but you know, you're not going to be able to flip it. I will show you over a process of 10 days, just different ways of looking at things that you do every day and don't even think twice about, and show you that actually what you're doing is you're operating from a place of fear. And if you can flip that around, again, be curious. Why do I do it? Because it's what I've always done. Why do I always do this? Gosh, it's because something my mum said to me when I was growing up, and actually it's stuck in my head. Really, it's just about retraining ourselves. And one of the ways that I sort of showcase it is you brush your teeth every day. Try brushing your teeth with the other hand. It feels really weird. You almost can't do it. You can't quite get your hand in the right way. So every time you berate yourself for not being able to do something or being able to switch your mindset, remind yourself how hard it is to brush your teeth with the other hand. It's just because you're not used to it. It's exactly the same thing. You wouldn't call yourself stupid for not being able to do that, because why would you be able to do that? And yet you'll call yourself stupid because you haven't, I don't know, stuck to an exercise plan, or you're dating someone who, oh my gosh, is exactly the same like the last person that you dated. You've just fallen into a pattern. So just a little mindset trick, just literally try and brush your teeth with the other hand to remind yourself you're trying to do something that's actually quite hard. You are capable. You're just not used to doing this.
People are enjoying your words so much, and we will definitely put links to the books and all of the things. And I would also just like to add that, my path for the last 24 years has been practicing meditation and really connecting with that divine intelligence. And it really is our default. We're really actually good at it. We really have this part of us that's always really in this well-being. It's just that we don't notice it. But really, if you think the thought right now, I wonder what my next thought's going to be, you'll notice that there's a part of you witnessing it. And that's who you are, the witness, right? But if you feel your pulse, even if you're having a moment where you're just like locked into some frenetic spinning thought, because that's what the mind does, there's a part of us that's just always, always, always within reach. That is kind of like this ocean inside. My mindfulness teacher used to say, imagine if you looked at the ocean and you made an assumption that the ocean was always moving. Because if you look at the ocean, it looks like that, because the top of the ocean is constantly responding and reacting to the weather. So it's never still. And if you went into the ocean, if you went down 4 feet, 9 feet, a mile, when you go down into the water, you realize how vast the ocean is, how incredibly still it is, how heavy, how quiet, how deafeningly still. And that the great majority of this incredible body of water called the ocean is in fact 99.9% a very still body of water that is so quiet. And that's really who we are. But what we've done is we've just played in the mind, which is the top level of this whole experience, rather than like touching into and memorizing our way to the witness, to consciousness. But that's really available. And when you go there, what you realize is that part of you is always, 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 right? Sort of aware that there's nothing but being brilliant. There's no way to be messy there, because it's just presence, and presence is a mic drop. Presence is super impressive. Presence is creativity. That's all anyone finds interesting. And so nothing else is missing. So that to me is why it is such an incredible gift to lean into that however we can, to lean into memorizing our way back to that. And I feel like for me, no matter what somebody asks me, how have you marketed your show? How did you do? I have no idea. I really don't know anything about it. In fact, I wish. My team and I have like tried a few times to really find someone who's great at marketing, and we've never found that person. We've never hired a marketing person. It's always been some ripple of some resonance, and we all have it. And while we're busy trying to be smarter and more interesting and more impressive and prove to ourselves all of the things, there is the actual self, the true identity, which is the most incredibly awesome, impressive thing. And all of us connect in that place. And so it is. I'm going to ask you one more question, I think, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell us where we can find you, and then you can go into your beautiful evening. And I'm going to stay on with Colleen, and we're going to get to spend the next 45 minutes or so really like workshopping some of this. And I think that's going to be beautiful because you gave us a lot of nourishing food for thought. My last question is about your podcast, just so everybody knows that you do have a podcast and that they understand what it's about. It's also called This Girl is on Fire. Tell everybody what that show is and how they can expect you to show up on that show and what they can expect that show sort of is delivering episode after episode.
Well, it's called This Girl's on Fire, and I only interview women on it, and I interview women who I think are on fire. And the premise of it is so simple. It's about an hour long, and I talk them through their life. And I always start with the same question: where were you born? What did your parents do? Because I love the idea of taking women who, some of them are in the public eye, and some aren't. Some are just women I've come across in life who I think are fascinating. And, I think we've got so used to celebrity culture and that we think only famous people are interesting. And clearly that's not the case. And so there are women in there who no one will have heard of, but actually I've stumbled across them and think their story is amazing. And the premise of it is sort of understanding how they got to where they are from, their childhood, through the lessons that they've learned. Now, some of them have been through incredibly difficult and challenging times. Some of them have just had very interesting lives. Some of the conversations are funny, and the lessons that they've learned have been through hilarious moments. But some of them have been through very traumatic moments. But for me, what I want the listener to walk away from is either, gosh, I never thought about it that way before, or that is a really interesting way of thinking differently about something. Mm-hmm. So the sort of the seam, if you like, that runs all the way through it is thinking differently. So I ask them, at what moment did you realize you actually had to think differently about this situation? Or what moment did you realize thinking differently had got you out of this situation? And then how I finish it every single time is, because the sort of key words of This Girl is on Fire is live, learn, and thrive. And so I just ask them, what's your definition of truly living? What has been your greatest learning? And when was a moment where you felt like you were truly thriving? It's actually a very simple podcast. It's a conversation between two women who are just exploring. And what I love about it, after 2 decades of live broadcasting, is I love having time to let people breathe, because I'm so used to someone sitting down and then me going, right, you got 8 minutes. You got eight minutes, tell me your life story, and then we got to go to a break. And I love the fact that actually I'm there to champion them, to show them in their best possible light. There is nothing that, if they feel uncomfortable about something, I will take it out. It's literally so that they can show their best self, the most vulnerable self, and the most beautiful self. I love it. I love doing the podcast. Most of it, our first series was recorded during lockdown. So some of the conversations might seem a bit old hat now, I suppose.
Muted her. And that's so cool to hear you share that, because it's so obvious how delighted you are with the experience. And when you made that comparison of like an 8-minute conversation versus just being able to breathe and take your time, it really is fascinating, because 8 minutes is definitely not enough to have a heart-to-heart conversation. And it's frightening that most of the time what we're consuming is actually a hashtag, or it's an Instagram post, and it's a 90-second reel. So it's not even 8 minutes. And this is why I think podcasting has become so big, and so many people, no matter what other things they're doing, they want to have a podcast, because we are so thirsty for real understanding and connection, and there's so much isolation. And when you listen like this, whether you're the listener or you are part of the creation process, there is so much satisfaction in facilitating that level of connection. And so I love that you're loving it. And I think everyone here is excited that you have one. They can come and now follow along. So tell everybody where they can find you and follow along and find updates to the show and everything like that.
Well, the This Girls on Fire podcast is pretty much everywhere you can get your podcast from: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that kind of thing. I'm Andrea McLean. You can find me if you put me into Google. My website should come up, and all the links will be there to This Girls on Fire. And the This Girls on Fire app is also on the App Store and on Google Play as well. So you can come and join me there.
Andrea, you're such a delight, and you're so beautiful. And this was such a gorgeous conversation. I'm so glad that you reached out and we connected. And yeah, thank you so much. So fun.
Thank you so much for having me on, well, tonight or this morning, depending on where we are in the world. And I'm so thankful actually that I reached out. And can I just say, it was literally through listening to you being interviewed, and I thought, you sound lovely. And it was a spur of the moment thing where I literally got my phone out and went, you don't know me, and I'm in the UK and you're in America, but can I just say, you sound lovely? And that was it. And then we ended up connecting, and here we are. So it was meant to be.
So good. I love it. I'm so glad that you did. I loved you right away. I looked at your feed and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be just like her. So I'm so glad that we connected. Thank you so much for coming on. We're now gonna take a minute to process and to reflect on all of these beautiful words that you shared.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you, and have a lovely day, everybody. Lovely to meet you all.
You too. Beautiful.